I wanted to start us out with a poem from Khalil Gibran called Fear. It is said that before entering a sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path that she has traveled from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road across forests and villages, and in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter, there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there is no other way. A river cannot go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering into the ocean, because only then will fear disappear. Because that's where the river will know that it's not about disappearing into the ocean, it's about becoming the ocean. So today, I want to talk about trusting the energy of new beginnings. You know, what they are, how to recognize them, why I think it's relevant, and how. Some of the ways that we can support ourselves and others as we navigate a new beginning. So, does anyone feel the shift of fall? Yeah. For many years, I worked for the phone company. And this was before the cellular revolution, right? So we were in charge of putting in telephone lines for the thousands and thousands and thousands of college students that were coming into Massachusetts every year. It was the equivalent of everyone, even in this town, moving out and moving back in. So when you feel that energy of the fall, that's that energy of new beginnings, and it's all those like college students and back to school. There's definitely a shift in the energy. Something is ending, summer, and something is beginning, fall. So trusting in the energy of new beginnings, for me, it's about the active use of our power of faith, of life, of wisdom, of imagination, actually all of the powers. But faith for me is a big one. It invites us to trust in God as that ever-evolving, ever-expansive good that is within us and always around us. Unity Minister Robert Brummett, in his book Finding Yourself in Transition, states that we may think a new beginning as an external change, but actually it begins with an internal experience. It may be experienced as a subtle inner shift, a new sense of readiness, or an inner awareness. The energy of a new beginning. Sometimes subtle and sometimes very loud. So why do I want to talk about this? Well, you all know that I'm currently in kind of a transition. The house that I'm living in is on the market. It has not sold yet. I think, to throw myself under the bus a little, I think I wanted to rush to the new beginning. Otherwise, I would have been talking about the void, which is where I am. But it's trusting. I know that something is shifting and changing. And it's about trusting that wherever I am, God is, and that God is in the midst of that change as well. So I'll also speak to myself here, and I feel like I'm probably not alone in this, but and even though that I've had a lifetime of growing through change, even though that I know that it's part of my soul's growth and evolution, I limit myself by avoiding it more often than I care to admit, until I'm kind of pushed into it. Can anyone else relate? Right? Anyone stay longer in a relationship, job, you name it, right? Long past the expiration date. Khalil Gibran, whose poem that I shared earlier, he's a poet and philosopher. he states that our anxiety doesn't come from thinking about the future, but from wanting to control it. Can anyone relate to that too? And I came across, this is one of the blessings I love about Facebook, is that I came across a meme that said, old ways won't open new doors. Old ways won't open new doors. So for us to evolve and shift, sometimes old consciousness or old ways of being have to end so that new ways can expand and grow. So back to my time at the phone company. My last job there was in the National Market Center in Boston. And part of my job was to training reps that were entering into the department. And it was a mixture of folks that were both new hires. We used to call them like off the street. What a term, right? And folks that had been there. They might have been transferring from other departments. And it was easier to train the new reps that were just new hires than it was the older reps or people, seasoned phone company folks, because they had a preconceived idea of how things should be. And they had a really hard time adapting to the change, where the new people just accepted it and went with the flow on that. So in finding yourself in transition, what Robert Brummett states that dealing with change in a mechanical way often results in pain and confusion because our inherent human nature is intrinsically related to the natural processes. Working effectively with any process requires that we be willing to trust the divine wisdom and order inherent within the process. Trying to force our personal will on a process is usually counterproductive and may be very damaging. For example, trying to force a flower to bloom before it's ready will kill the flower. Attempting to make a child walk or talk before they're ready may be damaging to the effect on the child's psyche. Anytime we violate the natural process, we damage and often inflict suffering, and mostly to ourselves. Anyone ever try to push the river? Mel Robbins, she's a podcaster, an author. She's done a TEDx talk. She's one of the people I follow because I really, I don't know, she's got this kind of tough, like, do it kind of mentality, and yet this big, huge heart behind all of that. And she said, direction and purpose are more important than speed, because if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter how fast you're traveling, right? So trusting the energy of a new beginning is to really, to take a moment to pause, to trust our intuition, that we will be led when to move and when not to move. And trust that wherever we are is absolutely perfect. So how do we do this? Like how do we know? Like how do we trust this? I'd say the first step is that might be some kind of assessment. For something new to begin, it means that something has shifted or ended. Robert Brummett describes 4 aspects of an ending as disengagement, disidentification, disenchantment, and disorientation. And see if you recognize yourself in any of these. As I was preparing this, I'm really seeing where I'm really seeing these at work in my life. So disengagement means that we're no longer engaged in what once was familiar part of our life. And that's actually often the beginning of the ending process. So if you feel like, if you have anything in your life that you feel like isn't like working anymore, that you just are not satisfied with, that could be the beginning of the end. Of it could be a way of being, a job, it could be a relationship. Disidentification, he states, is that when we lose an outer mirror, it can feel like we've lost a part of ourselves. And I think of this like when a spouse passes away, or there's been a divorce, or a career ends. We often identify ourselves through the roles that we play. And that's always subject to change. You know, years ago when I left the phone company, and that was a trip in itself, right? I took 4 T's for the first time. I put out there that I wanted to leave my job. I wanted to take a year off to do some healing work, and then eventually open my own center. And boy, was I shocked when I went to work that Monday after writing it out. I went to work that Monday, and rumors started flying around that a package was going to be offered. And they hadn't offered a package like that in 10 years. And needless to say, 40 days later, I had left my job at the phone company because I had put it out there. And like I said, I was starting to be disengaged and disenchanted, and all of that was happening at the same time. But putting it out there. So I left 40 days after. And a really unique piece is that they let me go by mistake. They did, and I got a letter in the mail, and it said, "We made a mistake. Please return to work on Monday." And they did this to a bunch of people, but they sent me the wrong letter in my offer, and so they had to honor my offer and let me go. But yeah, so you never know when we put things out there. So another, like I said, is disenchantment. Many of us are here at Unity because we became disenchanted with the faith tradition that we were raised in. You know, it's kind of like when Dorothy discovers that the Wizard of Oz is just a man. Anyone think back to an old relationship and wonder, what did I see in that person? He also talks about how disorientation, which can always feel uncomfortable. It's kind of like our GPS has stopped working. Like the old ways just don't work anymore. And it can really feel really disorienting and vulnerable and uncomfortable. I always think of lobsters when I think of this. Because in order for a lobster to molt, to grow, it has to leave its current shell behind. And there's a time that it has to allow itself to be vulnerable until its new shell has a chance to harden, a new, more expansive shell. And we're much like lobsters, right? For us to expand and grow, sometimes we have to stop doing the things we've always done. Sometimes that ending piece or that time in between can feel really awkward and uncomfortable. But the thing is that because it's new, something new wants to come forward. So this kind of leads me into just a little discussion about the void, which I like to think of the void as a gestation period, because even when a baby is born, right, the time in the womb has ended. So when we're in that void, that time in between before a new beginning is ready to begin, there's a lot happening. It's not without activity. Something is shifting and changing internally to match our outer experience. Years ago when I taught Finding Yourself in Transition, I created a mock Red Sea. And I had us all, we had the Pharisees and we had all the yelling at us, Moses leading the way, let our people go. And then we had the monkey mind, the Pharisees saying, get back here, get back here. And we ran through this mock Red Sea. But what we got to see on the other side of that is that we got to see why the void and why it might have taken them 40 years to go into the promised land, because everything they knew they had left behind, and they didn't quite have the consciousness yet to step into the promised land, to step into what was new for them. So, I mentioned earlier that, trusting the energy of new beginnings is the active use of our power, of wisdom, of imagination, of love, realizing all of them. That's our conscious awareness of them that can support us in knowing when it's time to begin something new. And to really fully trust that we will be supported, we will be loved, we will be guided. For there is no spot that God is not. So God is in our endings, and God is in our in-between, and God is in our new beginnings. So I don't know where you are in your journey. Whether something is ending and you're ready to step into that new higher expression of your next life, whether it be, retirement or moving or whatever that is. I know that, Ron, you must have gone through this process. You had talked about that you've just moved back here. So there was an ending and now there's a new beginning for you. So wherever you are, I hope that you know that you have the tools in unity, a prayer, a meditation, that you have a community that loves and supports you, that you have everything within you to need to step into a new beginning. Namaste. Wait a minute. Sorry, but I do have another thing that I did want to share too.
Could you lower your mic a little bit?
I can. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Thank you. I wanted to end with this quote from Henry David Thoreau. He said that I learned this, at least by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of their dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with success unexpected in common hours. He will put things behind, he will pass through an invisible boundary, new universal, more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around within him, and the old laws will be expanded, interpreted in his favor in a more liberal sense, and he will live with the license of a higher order of being. And now I'm going to invite you into a time of meditation. So I'm just going to invite you to just get comfortable in your chair. I always like to ground myself when I come into a time of prayer or meditation. Sometimes I rub my arms or wiggle my toes, scrunch my nose, put my hand on my heart. And I'm going to invite you to invoke your power of imagination. Imagine that you are standing before the sea of possibilities. There is a boat waiting for you to board. Before you board, you must decide what you want to take with you and what you will leave behind. There is only room for that which truly serves you. Could it be an old habit, an old way of being, a belief that is no longer serving you? any unforgiveness. Imagine that you're leaving it behind. You know, what will you leave behind? Any inherited beliefs in lack or scarcity? Imagine that there is a bonfire on the beach. And it is okay to discard what is no longer serving you into the fire, for they will be transmuted into pure light. Imagine you're discarding those things that aren't serving you into that fire. Feeling the warmth and the glow of the fire on your skin. Allow yourself to feel the relief and the lightness. And now you are free to repack your bag with wisdom, with love, with joy and connection, intelligence, faith, all the things that can support you on your journey. And as you make your way now up to the boat ramp, you take one last turn to say thank you for all that your journey has brought you up until now. Friendships, love, awareness, strength, wisdom. Now, as you find your seat on the boat, imagine a soft, gentle breeze caressing your skin. As the boat disembarks from shore, the only thing you see before you is the vastness of the ocean of possibilities. Feel the warmth of the sun surrounding you. Allow the warmth to penetrate deep into your heart and let the gentle winds of possibility whisper in your ear. Is there something that you're ready to step into? Is there a way of being that you want to embody? Listen to your heart as we spend some time in this silence. And as we prepare to return for shore, we give thanks for the whisperings of our heart, knowing that whether we heard something today, that whenever it's time for a new beginning for you, in whatever form, your heart will lead the way. You will be guided, you will be held, you will be welcomed. And you have everything you need within you. And so it is. Now you can gently open your eyes. Stretch. Come into this moment.